everybody, me again, and we're back with chapter 8, the wolud. I'm sure you can all remember how we left it last time, getting a bit weird. Lucy had just fallen into the floorboards under her bed and has gone down into what the Creakers called the wolud. So, let's get on with it and see what is down in the wolud. Lucy was sinking deeper and deeper. Every now and again the floor beneath her bed would stop swallowing her and the dark spongy walls around her would loosen and tighten before pulling her down again. She imagined that this was what it must feel like to be eaten whole by a giant snake. Wherever Lucy was going, whatever this wolud place was, it felt like she was being sucked through some sort of wormhole, travelling not only down below her bed, but also across time and space itself. She began to feel a little queasy, like the time she'd been training for the family jelly baby eating competition and she'd puked on her shoes. She couldn't quite put her finger on why or how, but everything she knew to be real and safe was suddenly uncertain. Up was down, left was right, and this way was that. Her mind was spinning with dizziness. It was not in a good way, like when you spin around and around in a park and fall over laughing. It was more like that dizziness you get when you ride a roller coaster too many times and you feel like your head is stuck to the ground and you can't stand up. Lucy's arms soon started feeling wobbly and tired. Her legs felt like they were made out of mashed potato. But she realised that she was losing her fight with the floor. But oddly enough, the very second Lucy stopped struggling and wiggling, the wall seemed to let her go. Her feet came out first as she plopped out of a hole and fell a few metres. But before she landed, she stopped in mid-air, hovering just like one of those astronauts on the International Space Station. Yep, Lucy was floating, just above the ground. Except the ground wasn't beneath her feet now. It was above her head. Everything was the wrong way up. The moment Lucy realised this, she went toppling up into it with a wet thud, landing next to the hole she'd plopped out of. Lucy was in the wolud. Whatever the wolud is, she muttered. She stood up, which was now down, brushed herself off, which was now on, and her head began to feel all twisted with this backwardness. She took a step forward, which was now backwards, and stumbled a little as the ground wobbled under her bare feet. It was the strangest thing she'd ever stepped on. It felt warm, damp and squelchy, like standing on a giant tongue. Yuck, Lucy thought. Oh, I wish I'd worn my slippers. That's the thing about having an adventure in the middle of the night. You can never be fully prepared for them. The air was hot and misty down here in this soggy corridor. Lucy felt her t-shirt began to stick to her arms and her back. She slicked her fringe out of her eyes, but it stayed there, stuck in place on the side of her forehead by small drops of sweat. The walls were slightly rounded, with ridges on them that arched up over Lucy's head as though she was standing in a giant throat. The thought made her shiver. Ooh. It also stank. It was so disgustingly rotten that Lucy could feel her eyes watering and she had to hold her nose. Suddenly the hole by her feet started wobbling like mud-flavoured jelly, and Lucy noticed a small wooden signpost next to it with one word written on it. Dunxton. Her surname. And Lucy recognised the writing instantly. It was the same sticky brown writing that had been used in the letter she found pinned to the school gates. So the Creakers wrote that letter, she muttered to herself as she studied the messy handwriting. The hole wobbled again, and a moment later she heard voices echoing it. Voices and laughter and cackling. And there's Lucy in the wolud. How do you think she's feeling right now? I'm sure that face can give you a clue. The Creakers. They must be following me down, she gasped. Lucy had no choice but to keep moving deeper into the wolud or they'd catch up with her and snatch her. She started running as best she could. It was like being on a bouncy castle, or in those dreams when you're running and not getting anywhere. Lucy puffed and panted, and her chest felt tight as she struggled for breath. I've got to slow down, she realised. Then, just like the backwardness of the upside-down floor, as Lucy slowed down and began walking, everything suddenly felt easier. She realised she could move faster. She only managed to sprint a few slow steps before her foot hit something, tripping her up. She bounced on the wobbly wet ground with a disgusting squelch. She came to a halt at the corner of her eye. Lucy caught sight of the thing that had tripped her. It was another small wooden signpost in the squishy floor, just like the one she'd seen with her surname on it. When Lucy read what this sign was, her heart leapt with hope. It said Quirk, exactly the same sloppy brown handwriting. And next to the signpost she saw a small hole, just like the one she'd plopped out of. Norman Quirk! There's got to be Norman's house through there, Lucy thought as she peered into the small opening. She could just make out the dark bedroom at the other end of it. Lucy looked around and saw another signpost just a few metres away. Then another, and another. There were hundreds, maybe thousands of these little wooden signposts, dotted all around her, stretching into the distance of the wolud, poking out into the steamy mist like tombstones in a graveyard. She began to read the names scrawled on them. Noying, Badding, Payne, Green, Twundle, Cobbersmith. It's Clutter Avenue, she realised. And as she stared at the positions of these signs, Lucy could tell by the way they all matched up perfectly with the houses and the streets of buildings of Whiffington town. Next to each post was its own small round opening, like a portal, joining this backwards place with the world above. There it is. Wolud, all of those signposts. Oh, little kiddling, a menacing grunt echoed off the wet walls. You's not supposed to be down in the wolud. Lucy spun round. Through the mist she saw 4 pairs of small black beady eyes staring at her. Her heart froze mid-beat. She could barely make out these 4 creatures through the haze, but their piercing eyes were enough to make her want to get out of here as fast as possible. Quickly she looked around at the long, wet, twisted root of the wolud, which seemed to go on and on deeper into the ground. Don't fancy going down there, she thought. Good idea, Lucy. Although what Lucy didn't know was that in the few chapters she was going to be... although what Lucy didn't know was that in a few chapters she'd be going much deeper into the wolud. What? Lucy thought. Nothing. Carry on. You're about to escape. Right, Lucy thought. She took a deep breath, flicked her fringe over, dived headfirst into the jelly-like hole next to Norman Quirk's signpost, hoping, wishing and praying it led to her world. She's crawling backs up, one of the Creakers hissed from somewhere behind her. Too late to get her now, grumbled another. We'll have to snatch her tomorrow, another one creaked. Then the wobbly walls grabbed her and sucked her in deeper, and Lucy could no longer hear them. There she is, going up, or is it down? In the hole. The sensation of going back down, or was it up? The tight, squishy wormhole was just as weird as when it swallowed her the first time. Lucy closed her eyes tight and held her breath as the walls wiggled and twisted like they were alive, pushing her along until they spat her into the darkness underneath another bed. She opened her eyes. Her heart was pounding and her breath was coming in shaky gasps. She was back in Whiffington, in someone else's bedroom. Hello? She whispered. There was no reply. She crawled out from under the bed and her legs wobbled as she stood up in the small room, still feeling the effects of the backwoods wolud. The room was covered with all sorts of bits and bobs, from maps and camping stoves to fishing rods and rope ladders, and the biggest collection of Transformer toys Lucy had ever seen. There was also an iron and an ironing board. with a neatly pressed badge-covered uniform ready for the morning, and hanging on the wall was a photo of a young boy and his father, both in full Scout uniforms, holding a huge fish between them, with even bigger smiles stretched across their proud faces. Definitely Norman's house, thought Lucy, and raced for the door. "Norman!" she called, running downstairs as fast as she could. She yanked open the front door, and to her surprise, she was blinded by sunlight as it engulfed her face with warm kindness. It was morning. "Lucy," Norman said, waking up in his hammock, shielding his eyes from the sun. "Monsters under the bed again?" he asked. "No, Creakers," Lucy replied. The hammock swung and swayed as Lucy climbed up next to Norman and told him all about it. So there we go. Lucy's gone into the wolud, a bit of a strange place. She's telling Norman about it. So we'll see what they come up with, what they're going to do next. Alright, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!